This week's Vanderbilt football pregame show is brought to you by The Wash House, the Murfreesboro Pure Milk Company, Sutherland and Belk, John Levin, Wobble Bond Dickinson, and Yeaman Packaging Systems. Topics on today's show are brought to you by the Murfreesboro Pure Milk Company, family-owned third-generation milk and ice cream distribution company located in Murfreesboro. A partnership began over 50 years ago with Purity Dairy in Nashville to provide purity milk and ice cream to consumers in Middle Tennessee, and they now serve Southern Kentucky, Northern Alabama, Chattanooga, and North Georgia. Today, they supply grocery stores, convenience stores, and others with Purity products, as well as Mayfield, Nestle, and Haagen-Dazs ice cream. For more info, visit their website at mpmci.com. Well, after a stunning overtime win over Virginia Tech to open the season, Vanderbilt returns home to First Bank Stadium this weekend to host Alcorn State on Saturday. This weekend's meeting will be the first between the Braves and the Commodores. Alcorn State opened its season last week at UAB. They fell 41-3, and it was not pretty. The leading passer for Alcorn State, Hartsfield, was 1 for 2 for 31 yards. Tyler Macon, who also had some snaps at quarterback, had 12 carries for 37 yards. And their leading receiver, 1 catch for 31 yards. So it was not very pretty last week for the Alcorn State Braves. They had 177 total yards on offense. They gave up 517 total yards to the UAB Blazers, coached by Trent Dilfer. They did force 3 turnovers on UAB, but they had 2 turnovers of their own, and they surrendered 31 first downs to UAB. So tough outing last week in week 1 for the Alcorn State Braves. And we'll see. Obviously, 3 quarterbacks played against UAB, so that could present some challenges for Vanderbilt. But at the end of the day, Vanderbilt should come out and dominate their opponent and move on to week 3 against Georgia State in Atlanta. It really is that simple. And something I am also interested in seeing is last year against Alabama A&M, Vanderbilt had a slow first half. So can they put their foot on the gas and keep it rolling all throughout the entirety of a game? That'll be something I'm watching. Vandy's hosting a team from the SWAC in back-to-back seasons. They obviously, like I just said, they beat Alabama A&M in Nashville last season. And coming off of last week is the challenge. Obviously, we know what Diego Pavia did. We've talked about it all week. 3 touchdowns, 294 total yards of offense against Virginia Tech. Vandy has won 3 straight season openers, if you think about it, which has been pretty impressive. In that game against the Hokies, they scored on their first 3 offensive possessions to take a 17-0 lead. That was the first time since 2017 that they scored on their first 3 possessions to open a season. That game was also the first overtime game under head coach Clark Lee. So who knows? You could be seeing another overtime game throughout the rest of the season. Maybe that gives Vanderbilt some experience. Quincy Skinner Jr. finished with a team-high 72 receiving yards on 4 catches and a touchdown. How about Glenn Seabrooks? Early in the game, grabbing an interception in his first career college game. It was the first interception by a defensive lineman since Nate Clifton back in September of last season in that game against Alabama A&M. Also, shout out to Brock Taylor. He had a 43-yard field goal on the opening drive. That was his first collegiate kick. And then later, he booted in a 53-yarder. That tied for 5th longest in program history and the longest kick since 2021. So it's been a few years since a Vanderbilt kicker had hit a 53-yard field goal. Also, Eli Stowers had a big catch in that game, 41 yards, one of 2 catches in his first game as a Commodore. He blocked really well. So did Cole Spence. That's something I'll be interested to see. How much more involved can the tight ends get against a team like Alcorn State, where you would imagine Vanderbilt dominates that game. Defensive line showed out. Corday Sidnor, Linus Zunk, Zaylen Wood had a sack. I thought the sack right before the half was huge from Zunk. And then, of course, the sack to force a 4th down from Zaylen Wood was massive as well. So Vanderbilt gets the win over Virginia Tech 34-27. Of course, we've recapped that all we can. This will not be the longest pregame show. Tried to get a guest on from Alcorn State. Did not quite work out, but we do have Joey Dwyer with his 5 things to watch. He will join us coming up in just a moment. And then Kevin Ingram, sideline reporter on the Vanderbilt Radio Network there on 102.5 The Game. He will join us, give us his perspective on last week's game against Virginia Tech. And then also, before those two interviews, we're going to revisit a conversation that Joey Dwyer had with linebacker Brian Longwell after a practice this week. So really interesting conversation there Joey had with Brian Longwell. A couple other notes I want to get to before we get to that interview. Vanderbilt had its first SEC Player of the Week award of this season as Diego Pavia was named Offensive Player of the Week on Monday. He's Vanderbilt's first SEC Offensive Player of the Week since Mike Wright back in 2022. So it's been a couple of years since Vanderbilt had an Offensive Player of the Week. So again, congratulations to Diego Pavia. And also, most importantly, and Joey talks about this with Brian Longwell here in a second, Cheez-It National Team of the Week by the Football Writers Association. So that's the biggest news. That's the biggest news. Vanderbilt is the Cheez-It National Team of the Week. All right, again, Saturday, 6:30 kickoff. It's on ESPNU, Vanderbilt and Alcorn State. And again, as you look at this matchup, Vanderbilt trying to move to 2-0, Alcorn State trying to find some momentum after last week's 41-3 loss to UAB. 6:30 kickoff. You can watch it on ESPNU. You can also hear it on 102.5 The Game. All right, moving on to our guest line. And our guest line, as usual, is always brought to you by John Levin, good friend of the show. Wobblebond Dickinson thanks the student athletes at Vanderbilt University for their dedication, effort, and hard work. Our guest line is also presented by Yeaman Packaging Systems, leaders in end-of-line packaging automation. And now, let's get to Joey Dwyer's conversation with Vanderbilt linebacker Brian Longwell.
Joey Dwyer here with Vanderbilt linebacker Brian Longwell. Brian, first of all, how were the Cheez-Its?
The Cheez-Its are great. I was kind of sad because I want to try to go back and get some hot and spicy ones because I got the Minecraft ones because I play Minecraft and I wanted the coins, but there was no more hot and spicy. Apparently, they took all of them. But great Cheez-Its.
Is that like the go-to flavor? What's the go-to Cheez-It flavor?
Go-to Cheez-It flavor, honestly, maybe they hit on me, but original.
Really?
Yeah, I'm just basic original hot and spicy. I just wanted to try it. I've never had it before. So
yeah, were they good?
Yeah, they're really good. I love Cheez-Its. My favorite snack.
Not a Grooves guy?
Nah, if I'm gonna Cheez-Its, either the puffed or the originals.
Never had the puffed.
The puffs are amazing. It's like a better Cheeto.
Fair enough. Tell me about the last week. Obviously, that's an accolade you guys have picked up, but I feel like you guys have gained some national traction. You've obviously gained some as well for the deflection. Yeah. Kind of what's the last week been like for you?
It's been pretty cool. I mean, I would like to bask in it a little longer, but I had to like kind of refocus my mind and just like, because like after like a day, it was just kind of didn't matter at that point. Like the game was over, all recognition happened. So after like Monday, I didn't really pay attention to it. I was more focused on Alcorn, but it was nice to have bask in the glory a little bit for a day.
For sure. Alcorn, obviously a team that maybe gives you some challenges with a few quarterbacks. Kind of how have you prepared for them? How difficult has it been to prepare for multiple quarterbacks at once you know you're going to see?
I mean, it's kind of difficult, but I wouldn't say it's too bad because they're all very similar. All dual threat guys, can move, can run around the pocket, can scramble out if you get undisciplined. But, I mean, it's mostly just focusing on plastering down deep when they start to scramble and capping the quarterback runs.
Sure. Where have you gotten better since last year? Feels like you're making more of an impact on a weekly basis now.
I would say I got a lot better with just the speed of the game. It's a lot slowed down a lot better in the playbook. And also, I'd say my process, like watching film and all that, has gotten a ton better. Like it's a lot easier to recognize formations and understand what's going on. So it allows me to play a lot faster than I used to.
Sure. You also showed the 5 off your jersey. Does that make you a little faster?
I think it did. Hit it 22, so I'd like to think that it made me a little bit faster.
For sure. Tell me about just what you thought of your performance against Virginia Tech. Obviously, made a deflection, but did you feel like it was more of a well-rounded game for you than you've had in the past?
Oh, yeah. It was definitely a lot better than I've had in the past. I would say a lot better in coverage. That was the main thing I wanted to work on a lot in the off-season. Still wasn't perfect. There are a lot of plays that I wish I could get back, a lot of opportunities that I missed, but I was pretty happy with my performance.
PFF really liked your tackling numbers, by the way. I don't know if you've looked at those.
I haven't, actually, not yet.
I don't know how many people do, but I do. So your tackling numbers were great. But
thank you, man.
You and Langston Patterson, obviously both Nashville guys. What's that meant to you to just have both of you kind of running that room?
It's actually kind of funny since we were rivals in high school.
Mm-hmm.
So, but like, he's such a great guy. I mean, chemistry, like all of that. I mean, I thought it was going to be a bit more contentious when I got there, but we put all that like behind us. Like it was all high school rivalry stuff. But he's a great guy, great leader, he's really helped me along in my process and really helped me like get to the level I'm at today.
How much did being a Nashville guy kind of impact your decision to come here and be a factor here?
I impacted a lot. I'm near my family. That's really important to me. My brother's dream school. Like it's just all get to be with my friends and all of that. And so it meant a lot to be able to like stay here, and it was really impactful to my decision.
Tell people your story about how you got here. Tell you what do people need to know about Brian Longwell and how you got to this point.
I'd say I got knocked down a lot. Got dropped from the school I wanted to go to on Christmas Day. Got a huge chip, just trying to prove everyone wrong. And you know, this is one of two choices I had for college. Man, there wasn't much for me there, so I got a huge chip, trying to prove it every day.
Sure, that chip seems to be something that's kind of team wide this year. Is that something you picked up on as well?
Yeah, I mean, everybody always doubts Vanderbilt. Everybody's always a lot of our guys, under recruited guys, have come out of high school trying to prove something in the SEC. So I think that chip's just gone bigger and bigger, especially with how last season ended. I mean, I remember in workouts, them being us coaches screaming at us like 2-10, 2-10, all working out. So like, just that mentality that all of us got, that we got to earn it all because nobody's going to respect us if we don't.
Have you guys kind of taken on an underdog role of sorts?
I'd say yeah. Say we definitely have. I mean, nobody ever thinks Vandy's like anything dangerous. Like everybody always underestimates us. All you hear about is people talking crap about Vandy, like how we're not a football school and all that. And so like just being able to prove them wrong and prove that we are a football school and we are a good team and we're not the bottom feeders of the SEC. It's just not it.
For sure. How far do you feel Virginia Tech went in that regard, kind of showing people?
Oh, I feel like it went miles. I think a lot of people, I mean, I saw some stuff, 89% fan vote, Virginia Tech, only my boy Lee Corso, only guy who voted for us. I mean, literally, I don't think there was a soul outside of this building who thought we were going to win that game. And, I mean, even around campus, I heard people like, oh, I really thought we were going to lose it, all that. Man, whatever. But, like, I think it went miles in proving that we are a team that can compete. We're not some pushover team. We're people who can fight. We're dogs. Like, that proved a lot.
Sure. This weekend, I feel like, is a chance for you guys to keep that momentum going. Just how have you guys kind of approached that and feel like maybe that's a game that you've got to be ready to play for? Obviously, a team some people would overlook.
I think, as Coach Lee said, it's a statement game. Like, we have good momentum. Eyes are finally on us. Now it's trying to prove that we are what we say we are, and that wasn't a fluke.
Great conversation there with Brian Longwell, Vanderbilt linebacker. I thought it was really interesting, him and Langston Patterson's relationship going back to their high school days. They were rivals with Longwell playing at Lipscomb Academy, Patterson playing at CPA. Great to see them playing again. And, you know, I think this season you will see just how good those guys are and how they build up that defense. So definitely looking forward to watching what Brian Longwell does this weekend and throughout the rest of the season. Before we move on to Joey Dwyer's 5 things to watch, I want to talk about Sutherland and Belk, longest running sponsor of VandySports.com. So we thank them. We cannot thank them enough for all their help and support of this podcast, this site, and everything we do. They are a family-owned injury law firm. If your loved one has been hurt or in an accident, give Taylor or Russell a call. That's 615-846-6200. Again, that's 615-846-6200 to see what your rights are and if they can help. And now, 5 things to watch with Joey Dwyer. Rolling along with our second pregame show of the year, it's time for Joey Dwyer's 5 things to watch heading into Saturday night's matchup, Alcorn State and Vanderbilt. Joey, the challenge ahead for Vanderbilt is to avoid complacency. Obviously, with the win last week, that can be a challenge at times, no matter who you play. You know, after a big week 1 game, you come back home to play a team that, quite frankly, isn't very good, but you still have to show up and play. You still have to show up and execute. So just initially, that's the challenge to me this week, Joey, that if this team can avoid distractions, can avoid complacency, and just focus on the task at hand, should be fine. And then the next week in Atlanta against Georgia State, and then you've got Missouri. So again, you got to take it week by week, but I'm still intrigued. I know there may not be as many eyes on this matchup, but I think a lot of us are still intrigued to see how Vanderbilt responds from a very emotional win to return home against a team that everyone knows you should beat.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally a team you should beat and beat by a good margin. Alcorn State lost 41-3 to UAB, and its opener, I think, threw for about 60 yards. Vanderbilt's got to come out and take care of business in this game. And we talked about it in the preseason. it's almost more of a barometer to see how far above these teams they are than how close they are to an Alabama or Texas. If they're truly in a healthy spot like we think they are with their program and their leadership inside the building and kind of their infrastructure, they come out and they don't take a game like this lightly, and they run a team like this off the field. I think that's the expectation this weekend, and if that's not what happens, I think we're looking at it with a little bit more concern than maybe we thought we would coming into the game. But from every account we have, their leadership is good, and kind of the morale of the locker room is good, and I would guess that they're not going to sleepwalk through a game like this, but I think that's the big question this weekend for me is, do they come out and are they ready to play, and are there starters out of this game by the fourth quarter?
That's your first thing to watch. Secondly, Diego Pavia. Obviously, we saw what he could do last week. It came out like a loose cannon and just ran all over Virginia Tech. Had, 26 carries. I mean, I don't think you can expect 26 carries against Alcorn State. I think if you maybe split that in half and he doesn't play the second half would be beautiful for this staff. You let Johnson and Dickey, duel it out there in the second half. But again, sometimes that doesn't quite happen. We saw Alabama A&M last year come in here and compete for a little bit, and that was kind of a mushy game, which, again, at the end of the last season, that didn't surprise us. But this year, Vanderbilt should dominate. They should come in here and take advantage of the weaknesses of Alcorn State, and I think they'll be able to do that with Diego Pavia. But his encore, can he do what he did a second time? He's got a lighter opponent, but still, Diego Pavia, I think we're going to get a good look at his consistency, Joey, and see if he can continue to do what he did last week against Virginia Tech.
Yeah, I mean, the guy's built himself a national brand, Billy. He did it last week. I think he's one of the talks of America right now, the talks of college football. Time to see him follow it up and continue to build that momentum and continue to build that brand. Obviously, it's against a FCS team, so it's not going to be on the same level as it was last weekend. But if Diego Pavia can come out and make a few plays, show some edge, I think that would go a long way for kind of his brand. And you're neglecting something if you write a 5 things to watch for a Vanderbilt football game, and Diego Pavia is not on the list at this point. I mean, he's the draw with this program, right? He's the thing that everybody's watching. Everybody wants to go out and see what Diego Pavia is going to do. And this is another interesting week for him. He said this week is the most important week yet. I don't know if I fully buy that, but it's going to be an interesting thing to see. Can he follow it up? Was last week maybe a little above his level, but Billy, I think by every indication we've got, he's going to be a really fun player for them. And we've got another opportunity to see him this week. And it's crazy to think that a Vanderbilt player is kind of the talk of the national media in some senses. They talked about him on Pat McAfee. They talked about him on ESPN, SEC Network, all these things. He's got the flair. Now it's time for him to not come out and lay a stinker. He should be out of this game at some point and let Nate Johnson and Drew Dickey kind of run the show. And I think the backup quarterback battle is interesting too, because Nate Johnson's listed as the 2, but we heard some things contrary to that in the preseason. So it'll be interesting to see, is Nate Johnson a package guy on Saturday when or if Pavia comes out of the game? Is Johnson the guy running the show, or is that Dickey first off? So it'll be interesting to see, and that's something I'm watching too with backup quarterback battle. And it's going to be interesting. You're going to really get a sense of the depth chart this weekend, I think, because you're going to see layers and layers of guys coming out if all goes well for Vanderbilt. The freshmen are going to be interesting to see. I'm sure we'll talk about that more, but backup quarterback's also where I'm watching. But Diego Pavia, you'd be negligent to write a 5 things to watch for story and not include something about him at this point.
Absolutely. Number 3, how deep does Vanderbilt's bench get, and who helps themselves? I like that question and how you phrase that, Joey. You just mentioned the quarterback position. Can Nate Johnson help himself tomorrow? I mean, I think he can. Now, Drew Dickey, I think we sort of know what Drew Dickey is, but I think Nate Johnson, in his opportunities to play this year, could prove to the staff that he could be the guy next season. And again, I'm not dropping Dickey off to the curb, but this offense operates at its peak level when the quarterback is running the football. I mean, you just saw that on Saturday, and not saying Dickey can't, but Nate Johnson, that's his game. That's in his DNA. So I'll be interested in, within this bench. I think Nate Johnson's a guy I'm watching, like you mentioned, but also some of the younger defensive players because they're going to need them. You're going to get banged up. We saw them get banged up on Saturday, whether it was – none of them were really serious, though, which I thought was interesting. Sindor went down. Dericky Wright went down. There were a couple other guys that went down with some nagging injuries, but luckily everybody was fine. But the other side of this is it's going to happen eventually where you have a couple of good players go down. And so whether it's Jalen Lackey that has to step up, I think he's a guy that's going to have to step in no matter what. But Jalen Lackey is one of the defensive players on the bench technically per se right now that I'm watching. And other than that, Joey, like offensively, what other receivers, like I'm interested to see Tristan Brown, as well as, does Bosky Barrett get any time? Does Joseph McVay get any time as well? So the young receivers, and then maybe Jalen Lackey at that corner spot, can they help themselves? Because you feel like they're going to need some more depth there defensively, and that could come from some younger guys.
Yeah, I just looked at the Alabama A&M game last year. They kind of sleepwalked through the first half of that game, and that game still was a big thing for their freshman class. Cedric Alexander kind of had his breakout game that week, and from there was a fixture in the running back rotation. If you remember week 1 last year, week 0 against Hawaii, wasn't super involved, especially considering where he was towards the end. I wonder if that could be something for somebody down the line here. Does Tristan Brown come out and impress some people? Does Joseph McVay do the same? Does Jalen Lackey, like you said, come out and do something? And it's also not even the freshmen that I'm super interested in at this point. It's also guys like Darren Agu, who really seem to be behind the curve. Didn't play a snap on Saturday against Virginia Tech. Prince Collie didn't play a snap. Jeffrey Ugo didn't play a snap. Guys like that who are almost kind of buried on the depth chart. Do those guys get in the game and do something? What about Jalen Gilbert? What about Steven Sanianola? I'm just interested to see guys like that get on the field and see if they can maybe help themselves a little bit in terms of the depth chart. And I think obviously it's a lower level opponent, but game reps are game reps, and those could loom large with the staff kind of as they evaluate moving forward. And season the depth chart can change in season, Billy, and I wonder if there's an opportunity for it to do that at the back end of some position groups this week.
Yeah, I mentioned there's no serious injuries coming out of Saturday's game, which feels like a miracle after last season, but there is another non-injury issue. Colby Taylor will not play in Saturday's game. Clark Lee called it an internal matter. There was an incident on the sideline during the Virginia Tech game, so no Colby Taylor this weekend. I would be surprised to see him next weekend as well. And we'll see after that. This is an ongoing issue. I don't think anyone really knows how it's going to play out. But all we know right now is that he's not going to play this weekend, and that's an opportunity. Like you talked about with some of the safeties there, and I just mentioned Jalen Lackey. Taco Wright is obviously going to have to play against Alcorn State. I think we know what you're getting for the most part in Martell Height and Tyson Russell as well. But Joey, this is an Alcorn State team, like you mentioned in your piece. They threw for just 60 yards against UAB last week, so that could provide some relief, as you say. But at the end of the day, you're going to have some younger guys come in here, and maybe not even younger guys. Like you mentioned, Tyson Russell, Gilbert as well have to come in. But Colby Taylor, I'll be interested. It won't come to fruition. We won't see what full life without Colby Taylor is like until probably Missouri. And that's when he could be back. Who knows? But I think that's interesting and something to definitely track with Colby Taylor.
Yeah, it's a good time for him to be out. And the best case for Vanderbilt is Colby Taylor comes back and is a factor for them. We've always kind of thought he's their best corner. He only played 28 snaps on Saturday, but I think was good in those snaps. Thought he made some nice tackles. But yeah, their corners are going to have to step up this weekend. To what extent, I'm not sure, because I just don't think Alcorn State has that much that can kind of punish you for bad cornerback play. But it's got to be better, at least execution-wise. They had some real gaffes in the third quarter and even the fourth quarter on Saturday with Trudeau Berry and Tyson Russell kind of playing opposite each other, Martell Height. I don't know that he really got burned or anything, but I just think they've got a lot to prove this weekend. Those are guys that they seem to recruit over, a lot of them. I think Height was probably one that they were going to play regardless, but you look at it, they brought 3 transfer corners in. All 3 transfer corners are not playing on Saturday, so it's a chance for some returners who have played some football before to prove that they're improved, and I think that's a position group I'm watching. And if they kind of hold Alcorn State to what they were against UAB, which I'm not sure is sustainable, I don't know that they're always going to be like that. But if they can do something like that, then I feel a lot better about their cornerback room and kind of just what they have there. But it is interesting. Jalen Lackey, I think, is the guy to watch there this weekend. Martel Hyde, I think you kind of know what you've got for now. Obviously, his development is going to be improved down the road. Tyson Russell, I think you know what you got. Tucker Wright, you know what you got. Trudeau Berry is one I have questions about that I'm interested to see this weekend. But Jalen Lackey, the one who's going to get snaps when he hasn't got snaps previously. Really interesting storyline to follow. How does his game work out, and kind of where does he stand after this one?
Lastly, here, Alcorn State is I would guess they play 3 quarterbacks. That's what they did last week against UAB. You've got Tyler Macon is one of the guys. Xavier Robinson. That's where most of the snaps came from. But Joey, Tyler Macon is an interesting story. He's got some talent. I mean, he's a guy similar to Pavia, similar build, 6 foot 198. You know, he's coming out of St. Louis. He's a runner. You know, he's maybe not the best passer, but I mean, he can be dynamic, and he has been throughout his career. But it does interest me that they played. You know, Xavier Robinson played a lot for Alcorn State. So could that be a challenge? I mean, we saw how Virginia Tech struggled to prepare for Diego Pavia and everything he threw at them. This is Vanderbilt's turn to prepare for a team they're probably not super familiar with, but a Tyler Macon guy that can run the football. And so again, I'm not comparing this to any other big challenge throughout the season, but this could be this could be something new early that Vanderbilt has to deal with, and maybe it takes them a series or two to get their footing down defensively. I mean, hopefully not, but I'm interested to see what challenges does Alcorn State present.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're complete blowover, because I don't know if they're awesome or a team that should compete with Vanderbilt, but it is interesting. I think they were picked second in the SWAC preseason poll. So there's clearly something that somebody is evaluating there that they didn't see in the UAB game. Clark Lee called it a disappointing game for Alcorn State in week 1. I think it was that. I wonder if they're better and if their quarterback play kind of stables out. It is interesting to think about. Linus Sunk was talking about how they're going to have to prepare for 3 quarterbacks, and wonder how much of a challenge that is for Vanderbilt. Regardless, I think Vanderbilt should go in there and run this team off the field. But Alcorn State, I think, is probably a little better than they showed in that UAB game. And I wouldn't be shocked if they're a little bit better against Vanderbilt than they were in that game. But Billy, I'm interested to see how this team responds to the Virginia Tech win, to kind of all the buzz they're getting. Do they come out and lay a stinker and leave this as a semi-close game, or do they come out and take care of business and let those younger guys get on the field and try to shake up the depth chart a little bit?
It'll be interesting. Again, unique challenge for Vanderbilt. The game will not be easy. No game is easy. It's hard to win, as Clark Lee says. But that challenge is coming back after a win over Virginia Tech for a home night game. You know, hopefully the fans show up as well for this program. We'll see what happens. But again, Vanderbilt, Alcorn State. There's your 5 things to watch from Joey Dwyer. We will keep this podcast rolling. Joey, thanks for checking in as always.
Thank you, Billy Derrick, the great.
Awesome conversation as usual with Joey Dwyer, one of the best out there. Before we close out this podcast with our interview with Vanderbilt sideline reporter Kevin Ingram, got a few words on the Wash House, another one of our sponsors. Are you dreading laundry day? Is it stealing time to do the things that you truly enjoy? Let the laundry professionals at the Wash House take care of that for you. They've got 2 convenient locations in the greater Nashville area. Just drop off your dirty laundry, and their professional attendants can give you back the one thing you can never have enough of, your time. Within 24 hours, you can pick up your nicely folded, fresh and clean laundry, ready to be put away. Log on to washhouseclean.com. That's washhouseclean.com. Or stop in today and get your time back. All right, let's kick it over to Kevin Ingram. Vanderbilt football sideline reporter Kevin Ingram checking in now to look ahead to this weekend's matchup. Vanderbilt and Alcorn State, 6:30. Obviously, you can hear it there. Kevin, Andrew Allegretta in the booth, along with Norma Jordan, 102.5 The Game. Kevin, let's start. And again, appreciate you checking in.
Sure.
I want to start with last week. And my goodness, I'm sure your view on the sideline was an interesting one. And I wouldn't be surprised to hear if that was one of the more unique experiences you've ever experienced on a Vanderbilt football field last Saturday.
It was one of the hottest experiences for one thing. Second half got a little warm. We had some nice cloud cover throughout a whole lot of the day, and then the sun came out in the second half, and it was roasting down there in the fourth quarter, but it was well worth it. What a fun win for the program and a great way to start this season. It was one of those games. Vanderbilt came out and played great in the first half, really dominated and up by 2 touchdowns at halftime. You knew Virginia Tech was going to make a run and make it an interesting game, and they did just that. They came back and they played a lot better in the second half and took the lead, but Vanderbilt really, I thought, was able to keep things steady and give themselves a great chance to win. Scored a touchdown with just under 2 minutes left when Diego Pavia hit Cedric Alexander, and then had a chance to win it at the buzzer, and field goal missed wide right, but then got to overtime and got the job done. So it was really fun, and I think the chance to visit with Clark Lee and with Diego Pavia when it was over with for me was really special too, because those guys were so excited. And you think about all the work that goes into a football season and all the anticipation, especially for that opener against Virginia Tech, and to come through and to win the way they did, overcome some adversity. It was neat to see, and I was happy for everybody involved.
You mentioned Pavia, and I don't know that many people around the country expected that performance. And going to practice, seeing all fall camp, I think you get a taste of what he can do. But Clark Lee had mentioned this, that your quarterbacks aren't live, and even Tim Beck had talked about it. It can be hard to evaluate your quarterbacks because your running element is very important. So did any part of that surprise you a little bit, or was that more of, man, that's Diego? That's
I think to me there was some of that. That's just Diego, because his toughness was well documented from his time in New Mexico State, and that was a lot of what makes him a terrific player, is that he gets out there and he runs the football and he takes a hit, he delivers hits, and he'll have a discussion or two with some opposing players and that sort of thing. But that's what makes him good, and what makes him fun to watch. And they aren't live during camp, and with good reason. You can't have your quarterbacks taking hits during practice. I mean, I think that everybody knows that. But there was, for me, a whole lot of, okay, what's this going to look like when we get out there and play a game for real? And I think we had some of those questions answered. And so much of what they do with this offense is based around the run, and Diego making those decisions of where to hang on to the football, or pitch or throw it, or whatever. And it seemed like he made the right decision more often than not in that football game. He did a great job with that, and just made big plays when you had to have them. He made veteran plays for a guy who's a graduate student, played a lot of college football, and really has an interesting journey. But yeah, I think his toughness, we knew that about him going in, and he gave everybody who hadn't seen him play a pretty big taste of it on Saturday.
I thought it was interesting how there were some offensive players, whether it's Quincy Skinner or Cedric Alexander. Eli Stowers had played with Pavia at New Mexico State prior, but Skinner and Alexander in particular, and even Junior Sherrill, guys that have been here for at least a year under a previous regime offensively. You get a new regime and a fresh look in terms of the coaching staff, and a new quarterback, of course, in Pavia. And you see some improvement from those guys. The catch from Skinner in the corner of the end zone. You mentioned Cedric Alexander ran really hard. That stood out to me, Kevin. Not sure if it did to you as well, but I just thought that was interesting how Pavia has elevated the level of play of all the offensive players. I'm sure he's affected the defense as well, but not to mention the coaching staff offensively that has come in and probably unlocked some pieces to some of those guys.
Yeah, I think so too. And Quincy Skinner is a guy who, he's flashed over the last few years. You've seen some big plays out of him, but now they really need him to be the guy at receiver and have a big season. Same for Junior. And those guys had nice games the other day. I would like to see him utilize the tight ends a little more, because those guys are talented dudes. Stowers did have a couple catches for 46 yards, but you want to see some of the others get involved too. But yeah, I think he has elevated the level of play for a lot of those guys. And I think even over on the other side of the football that he's provided some inspiration for the defensive players. I talked to CJ Taylor after practice yesterday, and even he was talking about Diego and how much fun he was to watch, and how, guys feed off his intensity and his enthusiasm. And he was saying that just how much fun the whole thing was. I asked CJ if he got to wear the cowboy hat in the locker room after the game was over. And he said, "No, that's not really my thing. I'll leave that to Diego."
Yeah, I heard there was another Pavia in the locker room.
Yeah, there was. That was quite the scene. I was not in there for that part. I was upstairs waiting to do the interviews, but yeah, that looked like quite the scene. And Clark Lee, I remember when I was talking to him for our post game, he said, "Yeah, it was an all-timer in there," and I could believe it.
No doubt. Let's talk about the challenge of, Joey Dwyer and I just talked about it previously. the challenge of coming back after that. You had a huge win at home, and now you come back to play an Alcorn State team that came off a very disappointing loss. So they'll be motivated, and they'll be playing on the road against an SEC team. How do you anticipate that, Kevin? Because it felt like at times last year, you go back to that Alabama A&M game where maybe a slow first half. I think in my mind, a fast start could is an important factor here to take put your foot on the gas, and then maybe let some other guys get in there in the second half.
Yeah, you want to come out and be sharp again this week. And when we did our keys to the game, that's one of the things that I felt like is a big key for this one. They were so ready to play against Virginia Tech. Came out and looked great in the first half. But you want to see that same performance early on against Alcorn State on Saturday. You don't want to come out and be sloppy and put the ball on the ground and commit a bunch of dumb penalties and stuff like that. You want to come out and be sharp and play well and take control of the game and not let it be a game. And you never know. I mean, you got to respect your opponent. Alcorn State, I mean, they have some tradition and some pride too, especially as you mentioned, they had a tough game against UAB their first time out. So yeah, I want to see these guys come out and give another sharp performance. I want to see them take a step forward. Clark Lee said the other day that he hoped that the Virginia Tech game would be the worst game they played. And but I think it's human nature though too, when you have a big emotional win like that, there's bound to be a little bit of letdown in practice the next week. Especially if you're not playing Alabama or Texas or, some big SEC team coming in here where you really, you know what you're getting into. I think there is some human nature in trying to avoid a letdown, but I think Clark Lee and the staff go about it the right way and have them ready to go on Saturday.
Kevin, the crowd on Saturday, obviously Clark mentioned that he was disappointed in that. He wants the stadium packed in black and gold. And after a win like that, you got to imagine that inspires some people to come check out the product. And not only Diego Pavia, this defense played well against Virginia Tech. And, like you mentioned, Brock Taylor hit a couple of big field goals there. But speak a little bit on that, the fact that after a win like that, you feel like the crowd and the city of Nashville, that could be something that they rally around, especially with a leader like Diego Pavia at the helm.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope we'll see a lot more fans in black and gold on Saturday. And we've seen it before when SEC teams have come in here, especially there are a lot of opposing fans. But I think for Virginia Tech fans, excuse me, it's a season opener. It's a destination city. They probably had this one circled on the calendar for a while. Like, hey, we can go spend a weekend in Nashville and watch our team play. And there are lots and lots of Virginia Tech fans there. I would have liked to see more black and gold in the stands. I know there was some talk about the students and people being turned away or whatever, but the student section was awesome. I mean, those kids are so jacked up, especially when big plays would happen. It was fun to look up there and see their reaction, and to look behind us on the Vanderbilt sideline and to see the fans there. So nothing sells tickets like winning. I mean, that's been true for years and years, no matter what sport you're talking about or what team you're talking about. But I do hope this community will rally around this team, and you got a chance for a great start to the season here. And, this weather's supposed to be fantastic on Saturday. So hopefully we'll see a big crowd out at the stadium, which, by the way, the renovations look terrific as well. They got the new end zone, and the north end zone is open. I took a lap around there when I got to the stadium on Saturday, and really got to give kudos to everybody who's put in the work. They've been working around the clock to get that ready, and it looked great. Looking forward to the whole thing being done, but the part they have finished now is fantastic. So, yeah, I want to. Hopefully, we'll see more fans out, and nothing brings fans in like winning, and hopefully, this team can keep on doing it.
Yeah, being on the field before the game, which walking around with Joey, and you're in the south side, looking ahead to the north end zone. It's a really, really cool look, and I think Clark is right with it being imposing. It's kind of right on top of you there.
It is. It's right on top of the field. There can't be very many seats in college football that are closer than those are.
No, really cool, and hopefully this weekend you won't be roasting there on the field because the turf gets hot. So hopefully it cools off a little bit. Lastly, here, Kev, throughout the rest of this season, I know take it week by week. That's the cliche coach term, but what is this team capable of in your mind? I mean, what can this team do the rest of the season? Maybe not just because of what they did against Virginia Tech, but how much improvement this team can make.
Billy, I'm only focused on Alcorn State. I don't even know who we play next week. I think your question is a good one, though. I mean, I felt like that win over Virginia Tech. I mean, it just feels like it opens up thinking toward, bigger things for this season. And especially in the non-conference games, it really gives you a chance to start off the season with a solid start before you jump into all those tough SEC games. Vanderbilt will play at home this week and then go on the road to play Georgia State, and then road trip to Missouri, which will be a hard game to start off SEC play. But yeah, I do feel like, if you can keep that momentum going and keep playing well, the SEC schedule is really tough, especially the home games are especially difficult this year. I mean, you look at it, you got Alabama, Texas, and Tennessee and South Carolina all coming in here, and those are really difficult games. You're talking about teams that, 3 out of the 4 are going to be more than likely ranked in the top 15 when they come here. The additions of Texas and Oklahoma have made it even more challenging what was already a tough league. But I do think, the optimism after that win over Virginia Tech, it feels like it gives you a lot of positive feelings toward this season and what it could be for Clark Lee in season number 4 at the helm of this Commodore team.
Looking forward to it. That's Kevin Ingram, sideline reporter for Vanderbilt football. You can hear them on 102.5 The Game, Andrew Allegretta and Norman Jordan. Kevin, thanks so much for taking the time. Enjoy the weekend.
Anytime, Billy. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
That'll do it for week 2 of the Vanderbilt football pregame show here on VandySports.com. Big thanks to Brian Longwell for giving Joey some of his time. Also, of course, Joey Dwyer, his 5 things to watch heading into Saturday night's matchup between Vanderbilt and Alcorn State. Also, Kevin Ingram, Vanderbilt's football sideline reporter, great perspective on what it was like being on the sideline there against Virginia Tech and the challenge of avoiding complacency and coming back this weekend and taking care of business against Alcorn State. This podcast has always been free, and we plan for it to stay free. Here's how you can help keep it that way. Give the podcast a review and a 5-star rating. That helps us get noticed. If you're listening and haven't subscribed to VandySports.com yet, please do. It's $99 a year, $9.99 a month. That helps us tremendously. Subscribe to our Vandy Sports YouTube channel. That's free. Also, if you're interested in sponsoring the show, how about this football team? Need a football sponsor? If you want to be that football sponsor and help us improve our coverage, just email Chris Lee. That's chrislee70@gmail.com. chrislee70@gmail.com. Again, Vanderbilt and Alcorn State, 6:30 kickoff right here in Nashville on First Bank Stadium. You can watch it on ESPNU. You can hear it on 102.5 The Game. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you again soon with more episodes of the Vandy Sports Podcast.